Who is he? Seen here speaking as a free man for the first time in 12 years. Is he a reporter, author, activist, or hacker? Julian Assange is something of an enigma. For more than 20 years, he's done everything in his power to uncover state secrets, whatever the cost.
Could I invite the cameraman to move back? If you don't, then you'll have to leave.
After a spectacular rise to fame, Julian Assange's fortunes took a nosedive.
Mr. Chairman, esteemed members of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, I apologize in advance if my words falter or if my presentation lacks the polish you might expect from such a distinguished forum. Isolation has taken its toll, which I am trying to unwind, and expressing myself in this setting is a challenge. I have traveled a long way, literally and figuratively, to be before you today. I was a computer scientist from a young age.
Hackers back then, they were not scared of anybody.
When I founded WikiLeaks, it was driven by a simple dream: to educate people about how the world works so that we might bring about something better.
They were pioneers. Pioneers in thinking, pioneers in willing to breach new frontiers.
We obtained and published truth about tens of thousands of hidden casualties of war.
We are taking aggressive steps to hold responsible those who stole this information.
While I was working with him, he became a celebrity. It's a bargain with the devil.
He was convinced that he would be extradited to the US very quickly.
I had lost years in the house arrest embassy.
The Ecuadorian embassy became a symbol of global resistance.
The United States must renounce its witch hunt against WikiLeaks.
For the first time in Ecuadorian history, and maybe global history too, a president granted an armed unit access to the embassy to arrest an asylum seeker.
It's atrocious conditions in a terrible prison.
I want to be totally clear. I am not free today because the system worked. I am free today because I pled guilty to journalism.
It was here, in a place that feels like the end of the world, that Assange's story started to take shape. His organization first made a name for itself in Iceland. In 2009, almost a year after the peak of the global financial crisis in 2008, WikiLeaks published documents on the collapse of the country's largest bank. These revelations brought journalists and activists into the fray, with ambitions to change the world and enlighten the public by affording citizens access to sensitive information.
The reason why I rented this place was we were afraid that the CIA might have found us out. So we didn't want to have anybody below us or above us. We called it the bunker.
This woman here, Birgitte Jónsdóttir, was later elected to the Icelandic parliament. In March 2010, working from their bunker in Reykjavik, Assange and his team were preparing to publish documents that would change the world.
Wow. It has absolutely not changed at all. It's exactly the same. We had the computer here. We moved the kitchen table. It was like right here. We did all the work just in this room. It's smaller than I remember. Yes. I've been an activist ever since I can remember, actually.
You remember the first days you met Julian Assange?
They were asked to speak at a conference in Iceland, and I was considered the only geek in Parliament. So I was asked to speak at the same conference with Daniel Domscheit-Berg, who was just as important at that time.
Domscheit-Berg was an activist with the German hacker organization Chaos Computer Club, and also WikiLeaks' primary spokesperson at the time.
My name is Daniel. I'm with WikiLeaks in Germany. This is Julian. So it's a lot of organizations out there, people out there fighting for a good cause, that know that there is a certain specific document that they need, but they don't know how to get their hands on it. And this is what we're trying to assist, to defend freedom of speech, to defend human rights and all these interests that we have for the common good of the world.
And nobody knew who they were, honestly. I thought they were, slightly dorky. They were just some guys, if you know what I mean.
Guys who were mavericks, about to send shockwaves through the US with the disclosure of a secret, key piece of evidence in the debate over possible US war crimes in Iraq.
When he showed me the video, I immediately knew that I needed to help. And so I volunteered.
There's about 20 of them. All right, we got a guy with an RPG. Having a fire?
I got the job of looking at the film frame by frame to pull out the stills.
Come on, fire. Hey, Roger.
So I was looking at the video again and again and again, stopping on each frame to pull out the most impactful images. And it was just horrifying because you are literally trying to pull out the worst image of people that are, being killed like it's a computer game.
Yeah, look at that, right through the windshield.
We were all very emotional. It was very hard because it was so explosive just to see it, and just the way they were talking and, the guys in the helicopters and so forth. It was, and just how carelessly they were mowing these people down. And as I was pulling the stills, we started to see evidence that it was actually a father and his children in the van that they shot down in pieces.
Roger, I've got one small child wounded, over. Ah, damn. Oh well. Oh, it's their fault for bringing their kids to a battle. That's right.
Social media was only in its infancy back then. Television still dominated the media landscape. Images of 9/11, Afghanistan, and the war in Iraq flickered across screens worldwide. Lies like these were used to justify the invasion of Iraq.
We know that Saddam Hussein is determined to keep his weapons of mass destruction.
7 years after this statement, the superpowers' war hit an impasse. But despite the WikiLeaks scandal, among others, the war persisted. Hundreds of thousands of civilian deaths, over 1 million displaced people. The US under George W. Bush continued to impose its will upon the region.
It was my role to upload the video to YouTube. While they were traveling to America to do the press conference,
This video shows us the reality of modern war. And I don't think that that has been seen before.
The release of this raw, unredacted footage fundamentally altered the information landscape. It bypassed traditional media and went viral online, particularly on Twitter.
The WikiLeaks collateral murder footage is horrific, some of their most important and disturbing work.
A lesson for governments, transparency comes bottom up.
Still no mention of WikiLeaks video in mainstream US press.
I kinda lost my shit after seeing the following vid from WikiLeaks.
It was the first major success of an enigmatic unknown on the world stage.
Julian with an A, Assange, A-S-S-A-N-G-E.
A hacker who challenged the official narrative of the world's greatest superpower. But Assange's story began as a young Australian nerd who grew up in a rebellious counterculture.
In the 90s, I tinkered around with computers and accidentally came across a bunch of hackers. So up here, where this bridge is, that building there, that was where Melbourne Uni had all their computer systems that were people like Assange were just logging into. That's me. Melbourne's had a very long history of, like sort of an underground anti-establishment culture. It's a pretty sort of progressive place. And just up here is the Northcote Town Hall. And that's where they had swap meets. Computer nerds come and swap bits of hardware, modems, RAM. In the 90s, there was this nightclub called Dream Nightclub. It was popular with sort of goth, industrial, techno. Assange used to hang out there occasionally, and he was quite a distinct figure with his white hair and whatnot.
I was friends with a set of people from the underground community, and he was one of the people. But he was not in the center of the community. He was much more standing on the sidelines of the dance floor. At the rave party, he's the guy standing on the side and watching and thinking and, occasionally having a conversation. And a number of the other people who he was close to were also like that. But they would still go to the rave party. The hacking community was very much involved in building and developing a counterculture. And that counterculture fit very nicely with the native Australian psyche of irreverence. They were curious and they wanted to explore, but they lived a long way from anywhere because Melbourne is isolated. It's at the end of the earth. It's like living on the moon back then. So what they would do is use the computer networks to try and find the rest of the world. This was, in a sense, their way of backpacking, but they were doing it electronically. Yes, they were breaking rules, accessing unauthorized data, but they were not state actors involved in espionage. They were doing it because they wanted to see whether they were smart enough to break the technology.
I don't think there was any other policeman that knew that someone will be hacking into a computer, not back then. I was the only police officer that's involved in looking at this. People looking at me as if I'm a little bit crazy. These guys generally having a look at a system, see if they can hack in, they start bragging, they start saying, oh, listen, I got into this system. The other one will say, yeah, I got into this one. I noticed that a lot of this information was on BBSs.
In the 1990s, the first digital forums of the fledgling hacker community were known as bulletin board systems, or BBSs.
So BBS is very similar to today on the internet, where you have a web page that's focusing on a topic. And I'm thinking to myself, there has to be a BBS somewhere that is talking about hacking, and there was. That's where the intelligence started. Back then, the best hackers, the top 10 in the world. So I would say 7 were from Melbourne. I needed to know before they're going to hack, who are they? If I did not have that, we would not have any evidence.
You know the name Mandax?
Mandax, yes.
You remember?
Yes, Julian Assange. I would say he was more mature than other hackers. First, when I was watching him, I thought he was more older person. You know, he was specific about what he wanted.
In 1996, Assange was fined 2,100 Australian dollars for hacking into university and company servers. But that didn't turn him off for long.
One of the interesting bulletin boards was one called Suburbia. The guy who ran it sort of lost interest, and, Assange became the system operator. The tone changed remarkably. You'd log into it, and instead of, we've got some new music files or something, it'd be like, the message of the day would be bulletins of war crimes committed by, American troops in Somalia and stuff like that. And it'd become something more important and newsworthy.
Even then, he was captivated by investigative journalism, critical of the hierarchical powers of domination and skeptical of existing power structures. Assange was certain that computers were tools in the service of truth as he saw it. He called the realization of his vision WikiLeaks.
I was working for the Italian leading news magazine L'Espresso. One of my sources stopped talking to me. She was convinced that she was spied. She was convinced that someone was listening secretly to her phone conversations. That fact changed my professional life, because it was the first time that I realized I need better source protection. I studied mathematics. I had some theoretical background in cryptography. Cryptography is a branch of mathematics which allows you to protect your communications so that they are not immediately accessible to everyone. So my idea was, if I learn how to use cryptography, I will have better source protection. One of my sources told me, you should have a look on that bunch of lunatics. The only media organization using cryptography systematically to protect their sources was not The Guardian, was not the New York Times. It was a tiny organization, mostly unknown, founded by Julian Assange, and that organization was WikiLeaks. After Collateral Murder video, the media started reporting that they had much more documents, secret documents, maybe tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands. Then 1 month after that, he published the first 76,000 documents about the Afghan war logs.
It's one of the biggest leaks in US military history. It gives a raw picture of war written by the soldiers fighting it.
I still remember how emotional it was when I got access to these documents, because for the first time we could access what was actually going on the war theater as being discussed by the soldiers. I think it was a gift to have an opportunity to read what was going on in a war, not 50 years after, when just historians are interested in the war, but as the war was going on.
Assange believed that the information was in the interests of the Afghan people and the public as a whole, and that these classified documents should be made public. But to U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, this was an attack on U.S. national security.
The United States strongly condemns the illegal disclosure of classified information. I want you to know that we are taking aggressive steps to hold responsible those who stole this information.
Hi, you've reached Brad Manning at my deployment phone number.
The voicemail message of the military analyst who at the time was known as Bradley Manning before her transition. Manning was the WikiLeaks source. The U.S. Army identified her within a matter of days. Her arrest was an act of symbolism. Some saw Chelsea Manning as a threat. For others, she was a heroine. Individuals could now overturn the established order by publishing sensitive data.
We all felt that by releasing this, we might be able to prevent other wars from happening, that some of the people that were obviously doing criminal things would be held to account. But in the end, the only person that's ever been held to account for this was the whistleblower, Chelsea Manning. There would be no WikiLeaks if somebody didn't do the most dangerous thing, and that's to report on a tyranny and oppression. The story shouldn't evolve around one person. WikiLeaks, the project, was never about one person. It was about a lot of people that risked everything.
Holy f***. We're familiar with groups.
If you have a whistleblowing website, a technical platform for a whistleblower or a source to bring information, you should never become the story. If you become the story, then you're not providing the service.
What? Jesus Christ.
Has it all again? The front page. And
while I was working with him, he became a celebrity. I just, I wouldn't want to wish it on my worst enemy to become a celebrity. It's a bargain with the devil.
Is that the timestamp?
Yeah.
What? I'm untouchable now in this country.
Untouchable?
Untouchable.
That's a bit of hubris.
Well, for a couple of days.
Assange gladly put himself in the spotlight. In his view, the best protection for the group. August 2010 in Sweden. Julian Assange took part in a public conference. He accused the Pentagon of wanting to destroy him.
Only last week, the Pentagon spent 25 minutes issuing a series of demands to this organization. One of those demands was that we destroy our archives of classified information relating to the Pentagon. If we did not follow those demands, then we would be coerced into following those demands. And the Pentagon, when asked through what mechanism or what power it could engage in that coercion, said that it was the Department of Defense and issues as to legalities were not of its concern.
Are you really safe in Sweden?
Well, I guess time will tell.
A few days later, an investigation into Julian Assange was launched in Sweden. The case centered on allegations made by two women concerning non-consensual sexual acts without a condom. The two women, originally supporters of Assange, called for a fair investigation.
I did try to organize a meeting with key players in WikiLeaks when the Sweden thing happened, and that was the end of that, if you know what I mean. So I left the organization very shortly after that.
WikiLeaks denounced the allegations as a smear campaign. The two women concerned were then subjected to a barrage of intense hostility. Swedish public prosecutors had launched an investigation. Assange was allowed to leave Sweden, but his movements were closely monitored.
I remember we decided to meet. He arrived directly from Stockholm. And he had no luggage, with the exception of a small plastic bag with a t-shirt and a toothbrush. And he told me, this is all I was given at the airport. My baggage got lost. And he told me that basically there were 3 encrypted computers in his bag, and they got lost. They were never ever found out where they ended up. I remember Julian had several mobile phones, and one of these phones immediately started ringing, and Julian answered the call. And it was his Swedish lawyer, and he told Julian that the Swedish prosecutors wanted to arrest him, and actually they had ordered his arrest. He was convinced that once extradited to Sweden, he would be extradited to the US very quickly.
December 2010. While in London, Julian Assange learned that an Interpol warrant had been issued for his arrest in connection with the allegations from Sweden. He turned himself in to the police. After 9 days in custody, he was released on bail and placed under house arrest with an electronic tag.
I hope to continue my work and continue to protest my innocence. Thank you.
With the Pentagon breathing down his neck and his classification as a sex offender by Interpol, Assange stepped up his revelations via WikiLeaks. He published US diplomatic secrets, hundreds of thousands of classified documents, global surveillance, corruption from Russia to Africa, major industrial contracts, private details about presidents or the identities of opponents. It was all there. Investigative journalists and activists jumped on the leaks. The headlines came thick and fast. Assange showed the world what was happening behind the scenes of the world's greatest superpower.
Cuando yo conocí a Julián ya estaba.
When I first met Julian, he was already dividing the room. To some, he was a hero. To others, a villain.
Convertir en un villano.
The revelations aroused considerable interest in Ecuador, a country that was resolutely resisting U.S. hegemony on the South American continent at the time.
These reports exposed the hypocrisy of the U.S., to put it mildly.
De parte de los norteamericanos. Y se descubrió que la embajada
It transpired that the U.S. Embassy had a direct line to certain police units.
Con unidades policiales. Y eso.
This led to something unprecedented in my country's history, to my knowledge: the expulsion of the U.S. ambassador.
Expulsión de una embajadora norteamericana.
Ha sido un honor tremendo representar a Estados Unidos aquí y a mi presidente Barack Obama.
WikiLeaks tenía en su poder.
WikiLeaks had even more revelations up its sleeve.
El Ecuador.
And Ecuador wanted to have a look at it all.
Buscar toda la información.
I was in London at the time.
Yo puedo contactar a Julian
I managed to get in touch with Julian Assange, who gave me the go-ahead.
Luz verde.
That's how it all began.
Y eso fue el inicio de todo. Julian
was under electronic surveillance at a friend's country estate. I arrived at the meeting full of enthusiasm.
Entusiasmado a esta reunión y fue un
It was a very special day for me personally.
Muy bonito para mí en lo personal. Éramos los primeros y creo que
we were the first, and as far as I know, the only diplomats to meet the WikiLeaks team.
A visitar a WikiLeaks.
For me, that was a sign.
Eso fue una señal.
Assange feared extradition to Sweden, but above all, he feared being transferred from there to the US, where he could face prosecution under the Espionage Act.
Me contactó Stella Morris.
Stella Morris got in touch with me. She was Julian's lawyer and later became his wife many years later. She asked me, Fidel, do you think Ecuador would be prepared to grant Julian Assange political asylum? I was surprised, of course, but also pleased.
Contento. Nadie sabía de que él vendría.
No one else knew apart from me. I knew Julian was coming that day, but I didn't know when exactly. I got a call from the embassy. Come here right away. I asked, what's happened? Do it right now. That's when I knew Julian had arrived. It was crazy. No one was more nervous than I was. We informed Quito and the British. When it became public knowledge, it was complete pandemonium. Inside, the phones were ringing off the hook. Whether mobiles or landlines, they just wouldn't stop ringing. Calls were coming in from all over the world. And outside, the place was swarming with cameras. The whole world was there. It was on every front page.
Primera noticia.
Weren't you told before he arrived?
No, I never spoke to Julian Assange. I found out from the ambassador.
What happened at that moment? Were you under a lot of diplomatic pressure?
To be honest, not much pressure was put on me directly, perhaps on the ambassador. On one occasion, he informed me that the United Kingdom had threatened to force its way into the embassy. I told him that would be a breach of international law and a stupid move. In the end, the British didn't dare. It took us 2 months to assess Assange's situation. We realized that he didn't stand the slightest chance of a fair trial. In accordance with international law and in the exercise of our sovereignty, we decided to grant him political asylum.
It was a truly uplifting moment, a momentous day when Julian was granted political asylum. He hadn't appeared in public for 2 months. There were nearly 1,000 people gathered outside the embassy, along with hundreds of police officers.
Cientos de policías.
If the UK did not throw away the Vienna Conventions, it is because the world was watching. And the world was watching because you were watching.
The Ecuadorian embassy became a symbol of global resistance.
The United States must renounce its witch hunt against WikiLeaks.
There was something hyper-rebellious about it. Neither the Americans nor the British were used to that. These countries, which dominate the geopolitical landscape, are used to deciding for themselves who deserves political asylum and who does not. But when they themselves are the persecutors, they don't expect anyone to stand up to them and say, "Hold on a moment."
No?
3 years after Chelsea Manning's revelations, a new American whistleblower emerged. His name was Edward Snowden. He was an analyst working on behalf of the CIA and the NSA, the powerful US intelligence agency responsible for the interception, processing, and analysis of communications worldwide. The documents revealed the extent of US mass surveillance programs. Snowden became the most wanted man in the US. He went into hiding in Hong Kong for over 2 weeks.
El día 20 de junio.
On the 20th of June at 3 in the morning, I was woken up by a phone call.
3 de la mañana. Y era Estela.
It was Stella. Fidel, you need to come to the embassy straight away. It's an emergency.
Viajé a esa hora. Julian estaba.
I set off immediately. Julian was awake and explained to me, "We must act. Edward Snowden needs to leave Hong Kong immediately."
Inmediatamente salir de Hong Kong.
What can we do?
¿Qué podemos hacer? Me explicó que tenía un plan.
He explained that there was an escape plan for Snowden to allow him to travel via Moscow to Ecuador, from Moscow to Havana, and from there to South America.
Hacia Sudamérica. Como yo era el cónsul de Ecuador,
as I was Ecuador's consul, I could issue him with what's known as a letter of safe conduct.
Ciertamente era un documento.
Of course, this was an exceptional document, but it could work. In theory, at least.
En teoría.
WikiLeaks has assisted Mr. Snowden's political asylum in a democratic country, travel papers and safe exit from Hong Kong.
When Julian announced there was an official document, nobody knew what he meant. Neither President Correa nor the ambassador. They were beside themselves.
Were you initially angry because you didn't know that Snowden wanted to come to Ecuador?
Imagine, I heard on the news that he'd been granted an Ecuadorian passport. Of course, I was annoyed, but the consul reminded me of a predecessor in his post during the Second World War who risked his life issuing passports to Jews. That's in keeping with our country's tradition. It's the right thing to do. It left me speechless.
Yo mismo viajé a Moscú.
I traveled to Moscow myself with the original document. We tried to use it, but it wasn't approved. As soon as Snowden arrived in Moscow, he was trapped there. My personal interpretation is that Russia didn't let him leave because they realized keeping him there was a trump card in the geopolitical conflict with the US. He became a victim of that geopolitical conflict.
De la disputa geopolítica.
Edward Snowden hasn't set foot outside Russia since 2013. Although they've never met personally, Assange and Snowden are still celebrated by supporters as two iconic figures in the fight for transparency, uncompromising in their steadfast determination to expose the darkest secrets of those in power.
Debo reconocerte.
I must admit that when I first arrived at the embassy, I thought the case would be resolved within a few months, at most within a year. But in the end, this case practically took over my whole professional life.
Él tenía una vida absolutamente centrada en el ejercicio.
He had dedicated his life to journalism. He was the editor-in-chief of WikiLeaks. And after taking refuge in the embassy, his life became the subject of a complex legal case involving a team of lawyers of various nationalities from Sweden, the US, the UK, Spain, and Ecuador.
Suecos, norteamericanos, británicos, españoles, ecuatorianos.
For years, he was confined to a tiny flat in the Ecuadorian embassy in London, with no access to fresh air or sunlight, in circumstances that took a heavy toll on his physical and mental health.
Months and years passed at the Ecuadorian embassy in London, where journalists came to interview Assange about world affairs.
Julian Assange, bonjour.
Bonjour.
You've changed.
Vous avez changé.
That's been a difficult period for me and my family. On the other hand, my work continues.
We've heard that you grew up living free, living on farms, enjoying nature.
Très libre, vivant dans les fermes, dans la nature.
My boyhood was quite Tom Sawyer.
So this is a class photograph from the school in 1982. Here's the young Jules Assange, as he was then known. He is 11 years old. He's a happy, smiling young child, part of a small school group, and all those community values that one gets from closeness, almost a family feel of being in a small school. And you can see that he's very happy there. I was a school teacher for over 10 years in this area, and I remember from that period many young people who had the same sort of approach to life that I can see in the writings about Julian Assange, and in some of his own language, and even his career subsequently. It was a fierce sense of justice, what was right and wrong, and a sense of protest. His mother was involved in protests. He saw protests around him. There's one. The Terania Creek protests of 1979 are legend throughout Australia as the beginning of the environmental movement. The protest was about an old-growth forest that was to be logged, and the environmentalists in the area gathered together to stop it. The politicians realised that heavy-handed police involvement was not going to make this protest go away, and the laws were changed. That's part of the climate in which Julian and his family are living in Lismore.
It is healthy for children to have a physical childhood. The basic training, in fact, is not university. Basic training is physical interaction with the environment. I think it can help people think about problems.
Come on. Good boy.
If you're lucky enough to be surrounded by nature, you do wonder what it would be like to have no contact with nature for 7 years. In the first few months, he told me, I'm living in a spaceship. The furthest he could walk was 11 or 12 meters.
11 metros, 12 metros.
Not many people can imagine how hard that must be.
Cuán duro puede ser eso. Cuando uno escucha
When people think of an embassy, they often picture a luxurious building.
lujoso,
But the Ecuadorian embassy?
pero para el caso de la embajada del Ecuador,
It was a claustrophobic, stifling place.
asfixiante. Dentro de la embajada, Julian Assange tenía para su uso
At the embassy, Julian Assange had for his personal use only an office converted into a bedroom and a bathroom with a shower.
con una ducha propia.
Those were his only private rooms.
Aparte de
Otherwise, we shared an office.
una oficina que era compartida. La mitad estaba
One half
con
belonged to Julian, with his video and editing equipment and his computers.
equipos de video, de edición, sus computadoras. Y la otra mitad
The other half was my workspace, right next to Julian's.
junto a
We
Julián,
were back to back.
espalda contra espalda. Julián es una persona muy
Julian isn't like anyone else I know.
diferente a todo el resto de personas que conozco. Es un
He's a workaholic.
trabajólico. Es decir, está
He spends most of his time thinking about
en
work.
su trabajo. Hay dos cosas que quizás determinan que él
There may be two reasons for this. Being confined to one place made him focus entirely on his
hizo
work.
que sea concentrarse en el trabajo. Y segundo,
And then there's his autism.
tiene condición de autismo.
people who are neurodiverse have a very focused tunnel, attention to what they want to achieve, to what they think is important. And maybe they've spent quite a lot of time on the reasoning behind that, thinking it through very carefully and deeply. So they're frustrated when people around them really only look at the shallow surface and don't understand the deeper meaning of it. I would say that there was a much higher percentage of neurodiverse people who were in this early computer underground community than the general population. I think a lot of people just thought they were weird, but they seem really normal to me.
I didn't know I was on the spectrum when I was working with him. I was diagnosed maybe a year ago. I didn't even think that I was on the spectrum. I just thought I was a very sensitive poet. It's very difficult, but also I'm very thankful that it's made me into who I am. I'm hypersensitive. I've always been very preoccupied with the big picture. I thought that one of the reasons I liked the WikiLeaks was a big picture project. We are such chameleons that people don't even know that we are artistic because, it's like we hide it so well.
You are here in the embassy since May 952 days. How are you doing today?
People ask this question, but about the same as any other day. Am I angry about the situation? Of course. Do you have to pay a price for things you believe in? Of course.
At the embassy, Assange continued the WikiLeaks investigation into Hillary Clinton.
Hillary Clinton emails reveal attempts to place bounty on WikiLeaks.
Hillary Clinton emails shows effort to quash story about WikiLeaks and Turkey.
Hillary Clinton emails reveal how State Department shaped media coverage of WikiLeaks.
Hillary arranged $850 million loan to her pals to build world's largest coal power plant.
Hillary Clinton had been accusing Assange of jeopardizing U.S. security since 2010. Now she'd set her sights on the presidency. 6 months before the election, she was considered the favorite.
It was by watching the Clinton Foundation that I could see most clearly when Hillary Clinton was going to run for president. For the period of time that Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State in the United States from 2009-2012, that Clinton Foundation received more than $200 million a year, $2 billion altogether. And when you look at the donors, it appears that many of the donors believed that they were buying influence over Secretary Clinton.
July 2016. WikiLeaks published over 40,000 emails from the Democratic National Committee, including personal correspondence from Hillary Clinton. These revealed secret agreements between Democrats. The security breaches in the presidential candidate's IT system made headlines around the world. U.S. intelligence agencies investigated the matter and concluded that Russian intelligence services were behind the hacks.
There was a lot of technical information in the background that I'm still not at liberty to discuss, but that we did a very thorough forensic investigation, and we have a pretty fair understanding of what happened. There was a persona, Guccifer 2.0, that claimed to be an independent hacker.
I found something like a dossier on Hillary Clinton on the server. It's a heavy folder of docs that will attract your attention. You'll like it.
It's always been our working assumption that that individual was not really an individual, but was actually a set of actors from Russian intelligence services. There's a lot of murkiness there in terms of how witting Assange was of what the Russians were doing.
If you have anything Hillary related, we want it in the next 2 days preferable because the DNC is approaching.
Okay, I see.
Are you sure that all the material you published on WikiLeaks in this moment was coming from Russian intelligence services?
So I suspect that is largely the case, but I don't know that for sure. There could have also been some other sources. I do think that the Russians fed him a fair amount of stuff. He may not have even known what he was getting. He could have been quite well used by Russian intelligence, knowing his background, knowing his political proclivities, knowing his history. They could certainly have seen him as a useful asset for a way to get some of this information out there in a way that they hoped would have it have more credibility.
We published that ugly truth. Our source wasn't from the Russian state, but if it had been from a state, would we have suppressed that information before an election, or would we have accurately and fairly published it? Of course we would have published it.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
I, Donald John Trump. Donald Trump era presidente.
Donald Trump became president. And this coincided with a significant event that's rarely discussed.
Se habla que a comienzos del 2017,
in early 2017, WikiLeaks published one of its biggest revelations, what's known as Vault 7.
Que se conoce como Vault 7.
It was the largest leak of CIA documents in history.
Mr. President, do you still love WikiLeaks?
I know nothing about WikiLeaks. It's not my thing. Devela todo el arsenal cibernético.
The CIA's entire cyber arsenal has been exposed. Viruses designed to infect mobile phones, tablets, and computers,
computadoras,
and even televisions.
Televisiones.
Julian declared to me, now the real war begins.
Empieza.
Assange is a narcissist who has created nothing of value. He relies on the dirty work of others to make himself famous. He's a fraud, a coward hiding behind a screen. We need to be as clever and innovative as the enemies we face, because they will not relent.
Y coincide con lo que conocemos ahora.
We now know that at that time, the CIA managed to infiltrate the embassy. To do so, it used the Spanish security firm UC Global.
Recuerdo perfectamente que yo venía.
I still remember it clearly. I was on my way home and standing in the street when I got a call. It was an unknown number. I answered and heard, "You don't know me, but I know everything about you."
Pero yo a ti te conozco perfectamente. Te he seguido durante años.
I've been spying on you for years and eavesdropping on your conversations. We've been monitoring everything you've done at the embassy.
Todo lo que hacías en la embajada.
I asked, "Who are you then?"
Pero ¿y quién eres? Y esta persona me dice,
he replied, "I used to work for the security firm UC Global."
De seguridad española, UC Global, que estaba,
which was responsible for security at the Ecuadorian embassy in London.
Y recuerdo perfectamente que yo le pregunto,
I clearly remember asking him, why would Ecuador want to spy on us?
y él
And he said, I didn't say Ecuador. We weren't spying on you for Ecuador, but on behalf of the US.
os espiábamos para Estados Unidos.
I want to tell this story because a man who spoke the truth was mistreated.
How should we introduce you? Who are you?
How should I put it? I worked for this security firm for 5 or 6 years. I kept a close watch on Julian Assange, his life, his daily routine, his moods, whether he was doing well, whether he seemed sad, who visited him, and how he reacted when someone came to see him. Here we see a party hosted by the ambassador. There's Julian.
And you've witnessed an instance of abuse.
Exactly, and who was involved. There was even talk of a poisoning plot.
That operation had a name, didn't it?
Yeah, Operation Hotel, and Julian was the hotel guest. At some point, everything changed. Not just Operation Hotel, but the whole company. There was talk of American friends. Before the 24th of December 2017, we observed Consul Fidel Narvaez photocopying a new passport. We discovered that this new passport belonged to Julian Assange.
We'd always had this strategy in mind, to make Julian Assange a diplomat with diplomatic immunity. In December 2017, the plan was ready.
We were told that it was absolutely essential to install this camera immediately. An important meeting was due to take place, which had to be filmed properly. We swapped the cameras and fitted new microphones, one of which was placed under the fire extinguisher in the meeting room. When they entered the room, the first problem arose. There hadn't been a camera there before. Julian felt uncomfortable being recorded. He sat down in his usual seat, which is over here, but then spotted the camera.
The man in the blue sweater is the head of the Ecuadorian Secret Service.
He used a notebook to write down sensitive information without having to say it out loud, so that the camera wouldn't pick it up. We made sure that one cameraman stayed in our office to operate the cameras. Another stood behind the door and listened in. I was one of those taking notes on what was said. At this meeting, I'm standing behind the door, taking notes on what my colleague can hear. We reported live on what was happening. It looks as though they're getting Fidel. Fidel's coming in. Fidel looks nervous. He's got his back to the camera the whole time.
Pocos días después, la ministra
A few days later, the Ecuadorian foreign minister called me to say that the US ambassador and the British ambassador had come to her office and had been informed that Julian Assange was due to leave the Ecuadorian embassy in London on a diplomatic passport, and that they would not accept this. It was obvious that the US judicial authorities had been informed by the intelligence services about what was happening in the embassy. And since the 21st of December 2017, when they received the recording, they had known that Julian would be leaving the embassy. They issued the arrest warrant to prevent him from leaving the country on a diplomatic passport.
At some point, I realized that I was doing something wrong and that I had to make amends. For me, the business with the baby was the last straw.
During his confinement at the Ecuadorian embassy in London, Julian Assange and his wife Stella had had 2 children.
There's the baby. He was brought to the embassy by an actor friend. There was a set ritual. He came in with the baby, and 3 minutes later, Stella arrived. At some point, it became absolutely clear. But they needed tangible proof that he was Stella's son, and probably Julian's as well. What sort of information can you get from a 3 to 6 month old baby? It was ridiculous. It was ridiculous to try and find out about the baby's identity or how it was related to the family. It was at that point in the mission that I spoke to the mother. I got the chance to tell Stella that I wanted to speak to her, but outside the embassy, as it was completely bugged.
The Ecuadorian embassy was surveilled from the outside. We never knew it was that kind of thing was going on. It was frightening, but it confirmed my instinct. You instinctively feel when you're under threat. When there's kind of a predator-prey kind of relationship, and that's what it felt like inside the embassy. Julian was prey, and I, by extension, was prey, and there were sinister things going on. We didn't know the shape of it. We didn't know where the limits were, and towards the end, certainly, it felt like there were no limits and anything could happen in the embassy.
Los Estados Unidos, los británicos,
the US and the British waited patiently for a change of government to take place in the country that was protecting Julian.
Político en el país que protegía a Julián.
And that's exactly what happened.
Y eso fue lo que sucedió.
Moreno was a member of the same political alliance that had governed Ecuador for 10 years.
El próximo año estará en marcha el nuevo sistema de emisión de pasaporte biométrico y cédula electrónica. Bienvenidos al futuro.
Pero más temprano que tarde.
But he soon showed his true colors and betrayed us.
y traicionó totalmente. Obviamente,
And of course, this happened with the full support of the US Embassy in Quito.
la embajada norteamericana en Quito. A partir de 2018,
As of 2018, they no longer protected him, and that was when all the harassment began,
y toda la estrategia
as well as the strategy to hand him over to his persecutors.
a sus perseguidores.
There'd been a series of incidents: bad behavior, verbal abuse. He even grabbed a security guard or kicked a football around. A long series of acts of misconduct that the Ecuadorian state could not tolerate. No state would have tolerated him.
Implementaron un protocolo de convivencia, unas nuevas reglas.
They laid down a protocol for his stay at the embassy, a new set of preposterous rules that violated human rights, a way to force him to cross the line so that they'd have a pretext to deport him. It was laid out like a carpet of banana skins, designed for him to slip on.
Unfortunately, Mr. Assange was unwilling to abide by the rules governing his stay. Ecuador had decided that it could no longer keep him in its diplomatic system.
It was psychological torture designed to force him to leave the embassy. But in the end, they failed. They were forced to hand him over to the British authorities. This goes against the Ecuadorian constitution, which expressly prohibits the extradition of refugees. But nothing happened because they were against us and on the side of the US. For the first time in Ecuadorian history, and maybe global history too, a president granted an armed unit, in this case the British police, access to the embassy to arrest an asylum seeker. That has never happened before.
Footage of a ghostly, pale Assange, abandoned by many of his supporters. A far cry from 7 years previously, when he robustly declared war on the US from his balcony. Assange was transferred to Belmarsh, a high-security prison in London for terrorism suspects and convicted terrorists. This was a symbolic move. The US Department of Justice had charged him with espionage. If extradited, the WikiLeaks founder would face up to 175 years in prison. This marked the start of a new legal battle.
The proceedings for Assange's extradition to the US have officially begun. We are angry because it's unjust. It should not have come to this.
Chelsea Manning had spent 7 years in prison in the US for passing classified documents to WikiLeaks before she was pardoned. In 2019, Manning refused to betray Assange. As a result, the whistleblower was sent back to prison for another year for contempt of court. In 2019, Swedish public prosecutors discontinued their investigations into Julian Assange. The authorities said while the rape allegation was credible, evidence had been considerably weakened in the decade that elapsed since the events in question.
What we heard this morning was more of the same. I've heard absolutely nothing new today, nothing that I haven't heard for 10 years.
Following this hearing, many believed his release was imminent.
The judge has stopped the extradition. Well, this is a victory.
Free Julian. Free the press. Free us all.
Then, 2 days later, reality set in.
This is disgraceful! Today's decision is disappointing because it's basically contradictory with the ruling that the same judge has made 2 days ago.
This is a huge disappointment. Julian should not be in Belmarsh prison in the first place. I urge the Department of Justice to drop the charges and the President of the United States to pardon Julian.
The UN Special Rapporteur on Torture visited Julian, accompanied by 2 doctors. In an alarming report, they stated that his condition was extremely serious and that there was a risk he might die in prison.
He's in atrocious conditions, unconvicted in a terrible prison. A person can only take so much. It's Wednesday, the 19th of June, and it's exactly 12 years today since Julian went into the embassy of Ecuador. And 12 years on, I'm visiting Julian in a high-security prison. But this period of our lives, I'm confident now, has come to an end.
If you're seeing this, it means he is out.
I still remember the 24th of June when I got a call from Stella. She told me that Julian had finally been liberated. I cried that day. A short while later, Julian and I were messaging each other. He was already on the plane. It was one of the most important moments of my life.
Amid the utmost secrecy, Julian Assange left British soil on a private jet. His destination was a small U.S. territory in the middle of the Pacific, the Mariana Islands. Here, en route to Australia, he met with U.S. judicial authorities to sign his plea deal.
Mr. Assange, are you in fact prepared to enter a plea of guilty or not guilty? What is your decision?
Guilty to the information.
With this pronouncement, it appears that you will be able to walk out of this courtroom a free man. Mr. Assange, apparently it's an early happy birthday to you. I understand your birthday is next week.
That's correct, Your Honor.
It's probably the first one you celebrate outside. I hope you will start your new life in that positive note.
Folks, here he is, ladies and gentlemen. Julian Assange. How does it feel to be a free man, Mr. Assange? Congratulations! How do you feel about the sentence, sir? Anything about the sentence? Anything about the body of government, sir? The body of government.
From the U.S. government's perspective, after Assange had been in the Ecuadorian embassy for so long and others, he probably was not perceived as the same level of problem anymore. But I suspect that a lot of it had to do with the desire not to necessarily have an ongoing public trial. A lot of questions would have been raised. An active, robust defense of Assange would have, potentially revealed additional information that the U.S. government may not have wanted to have discussed publicly. All of that could have factored into the decision.
I have worked on this case since 2009, 15 years, and in 15 years I have met Julian Assange as a free man only once. So this is the first time that I can see him walking as a free man. I can hardly convey my excitement and emotion for this.
Mr. Assange, it is great to have you today. How you visualize your life now after your case?
For my readaptation to the big wide world outside of house arrest, an embassy siege, and maximum security prison, it sure takes some adjustment. It's not simply the spooky sound of electric cars. They are very spooky. It is also the change in the society. Where he once released important war crimes videos that stirred public debate. Now, every day, there are live-streamed horrors from the wars in Ukraine and the war in Gaza. Hundreds of journalists have been killed. The impunity seems to mount. Expressing the truth has been undermined, attacked, weakened, and diminished.
WikiLeaks hasn't published anything since 2021. However, newsrooms around the world have adopted the organization's methods for obtaining information from whistleblowers.
La moral de esta historia es que
The moral of the story.
Que si quieres
If you set out to oppose the existing order, there's a price to pay.
Hay un precio para pagar. Julian Assange ha pagado un precio muy alto.
Julian paid a very high price.
Y quienes hemos defendido.
We, too, those of us who defended him, are paying a price. That's the moral, right?
Esa es la moral, ¿no?
We have to learn from the mistakes WikiLeaks did. The main mistake was to, make it as if it was one person. The most dangerous thing, like if you're an activist, you know this, that you will not paint a target on one person. And if that person goes, the whole thing unravels. It's crazy shit. And it's too often men that do it. There are no heroes. We're just gonna have to figure out how we can collectively save ourselves.
G'day, Etienne. It's Julian here. How are you going?
Fine. And you?
Okay. Just adapting and watching what's happening in the world.
In this world, there are seemingly limitless possibilities for surveillance, where vast amounts of information and disinformation obscure the truth. Who will be next to become a major part of history?